Hello, and welcome to the No Bad Questions podcast, where I try to learn in a conversational manner, to break down jargon, and to present the least amount of filtering as possible on a wide array of topics. I hope that you learn something too. If you do and want to support the podcast, you probably already know all the ways that you can do so. You can like, share, subscribe, hit the notifications, but ultimately, and what I hope you choose to do, is watch to the very end. With that, we'll start today's podcast. On this week's episode of No Bad Questions, I am joined by former CIA case officer Doug Laux. Doug served multiple tours throughout the Middle East. He was in Afghanistan for the 2010 Afghan surge and in Kandahar during Operation Neptune Spear, which resulted in the death of Osama bin Laden. His final assignment was with a top secret task force assigned to removing Syrian President Bashar al-Assad from power. He's the author of the New York Times best-selling book, Left of Boom: How a Young CIA Case Officer Penetrated the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, which is a great book, by the way. In his book, he describes how his approach resulted in unprecedented successes, including uncovering the largest IED network in the world, responsible for killing hundreds of U.S. soldiers. Since he left his role at CIA and writing his book, Mr. Laux has gone on to co-star on Discovery Channel's Finding Escobar's Millions in 2017 and the TV show Spy Games in 2020, and to serve as president of the nonprofit foundation Civil Servant, helping active duty soldiers deployed overseas. Doug, thank you for being here with me, and thank you for the sacrifices you've made. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Thanks, David. I really appreciate the kind words.
Now, out of respect for you, you didn't want to go on video, so we'll do audio only today. So if folks are watching on YouTube, don't expect suddenly to have Doug on camera. With that said, heard a lot of phrases about your title: case officer, field agent, spy. What is a case officer?
Yeah, that's a question that actually comes up a lot now that I'm out here in Hollywood, because, I say I'm a case officer and they're always going, well, what does that mean? What is a case officer? I'm going, a field operative. And they're saying, okay, what's that? A spy. Oh, you're a spy. Oh, you're a spy. Oh, okay, that's what it is. And the easiest reference, honestly, that I can give people is if you've ever seen, oh shoot, what's the name? I think it's called Homeland with Carrie, right?
Yeah.
Her main character, she's a case officer. And so you might go, well, no, she's a spy. No, she literally is a case officer. And that's what we do. We run human sources. And by run, I mean, the most definitive term for that would be speak with other people who have intelligence that they're willing to share with you, generally speaking, for a price. And so that's really what a spy does when it really breaks down. It's not Jason Bourne. It's not James Bond. It's definitely more Carrie Mathis.
What about The Gray Man? That just came out. Is it like that?
I haven't seen it. I had a couple friends who watched it. I tend to not watch CIA films like that. I prefer more like Mission Impossible and the really over-the-top ones, rather than the ones that really try to nail it and get it right. So I haven't seen it. But yeah, most of my friends said they weren't particularly a fan of it.
I can't speak to any level of realism, but watching it, I was like, this has to be so far afield from anything that Doug and I are going to talk about as to be laughable. So I had to interject it.
Yeah.
But one of the things, so you mentioned running human assets, and you broke that down to be, talking with people often for a price. And so much of what I felt like I read in your book was just building relationships with these people. And often with a culture barrier, sometimes, in Afghanistan, in a country that, at least according to the news, doesn't always like us. So what's the key? How do you start that, a cold relationship and turn it into something warm, you said for a price. Is it often just the money lubricates the path, or is there something, is there something else to it?
Yeah, it can be. And that's actually a thing that most people don't like to talk about, is that espionage, by and large, in my experience, and I'll just speak for myself, 95% of the time it was money. I mean, what can you do for me?
Right.
And the easiest way, as you said it, to lubricate something like that is the money. And most of the people that generally I was speaking with were impoverished, and so
Mm.
giving them some money was, a big reason why they did what they did. And there's this whole thing where people will say, well, no, you got to speak to their emotional core and you got to really understand who they are. And while it's true, and that's called getting a baseline on somebody, it's certainly true. But I could show you 9 out of 10 people. If I say, well, here's $1 million, do this, 9 out of 10 people are probably going to do it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or name your price, whatever it is. So yeah, it's important to have a baseline. It's important. And like you said, it's a relationship. And so it's no different than being, in a relationship with another human, boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatever you want to call it. You get to know them. And so you get to know what their favorite color is. You get to know, what makes them smile, what makes them sad, what their favorite movie is, what their favorite song is. And once you have that baseline and you can start to understand who that person is, it's a really powerful thing.
Are there, so far anyway, I think most of my listeners and viewers are people in, generally speaking, white collar management, leadership, sales, business development type positions. Are there lessons? Okay, we probably have to take the outright payments out of the picture. So are there are there tools and techniques that you can, tips you could give to them? I mean, you just talked about kind of getting to know the other person, but is there anything that you could give advice and wisdom to people who maybe are in less intense jobs on the building the relationship front?
Sure, I can. And the first thing I would say is to disabuse yourself of the notion that you can read someone, like flat out. And there's a lot of people who used to have my profession who have profited on this, and I'm not too happy about it. The CIA teaches you that you have to have a baseline, and that comes through repetition. Okay, that comes from getting to know that person. You can't just flat out cold read someone. And so when people say like, oh, body language this or body language that, or if they, pinch their ear, they're lying, or maybe that person just has a nervous tick. And I'll give you a good example. One of my assets, he used to sweat profusely when he was talking to me. And I came to realize only after he admitted to me, it was because we were eating. And he had a glandular disorder where it made him sweat really bad when he ate. And I always just thought, okay, I'll offer food and,
Right.
this is how we'll do it. But he would sweat profusely. And so someone might say, who doesn't know this individual, oh, he's lying. That's why he's sweating. Oh, he's lying to you. That's why
Nervous.
he's so nervous. No, it was a glandular disorder. And so knowing that, how could I have possibly have just perceived that from looking at you or just talking with you until you let me know those things?
Right.
And so I think it's really, in any perspective, what I would say, rather than to give advice on how to, get information out of somebody, what you should instead realize is it's not going to happen unless they're willing and they want to do it. They have to have already made that commitment, and they have already had to have decided in their own mind they're going to do it. And you can bring people to that conclusion, but a lot of times they have to come to it on their own.
And then you've got to put in the reps. I mean, essentially is
Yeah,
also the other
exactly.
point, right?
Exactly. But that's how you bring them to the water. You see, like, you have to be the one who is continuously there, and you have to be the one continuously saying the right thing and asking the right questions. So again, I mean, I guess most importantly, what I would emphasize is there is no like secret weapon where you can suddenly just read somebody because they winked in a certain way or adjusted their tie in a certain way. That's all baloney, and the CIA teaches you that flat out. That is not true. And so again, some of my colleagues who go out there and say that they can read you or spy the lie, that's simply not how we're trained. That is not true.
Well, that's a major disappointment. I was hoping to get, super secrets here today, um, but that makes sense because to your point, you don't know someone's context. You might make assumptions, but they're assumptions, and those, as we know, can lead us astray.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's good wisdom, and I appreciate that. I want to move past that then to another item that jumped out at me like over and over in your book.
Okay.
You read these things on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn all the time, and there's a lot of good wisdom on there, but there's a lot of points about onboarding and how to onboard team members, and books from the Harvard Business Review and so forth, which is a great publication, but ultimately how we need to better onboard our staff. And yet you've got this intense job as a case officer, as a member of the CIA. And I feel like over and over again in the book, it's basically, Doug, figure it out. Either said to you explicitly or implied through like a low tolerance for asking questions. So A, is that wrong? Am I getting the wrong impression, or is that truly like there is no onboarding? And B, how the heck, I mean, you're like, what, mid early 20s? I can't imagine dealing with the stress of just, figure it out in the middle of Afghanistan, or whatever. Am I picking up the right story there?
You are. And that's a big reason why a lot of my former colleagues are not happy with me for writing that book, because they felt I was giving them a black eye. And what I like to remind them, and what I like to remind your listeners, is this: at the end of the day, we're all still humans.
Right.
And we look at people who are in the CIA and we think, oh, it's a super agent because they're in movies and they make movies about them. Like you just said, the one that just came out with Ryan Gosling, like, oh, the gray man, like, oh, they're Superman, they have a cape. But at the end of the day, we all still get colds. We all still have children. We all still have to go to funerals. We all still attend birthdays. We're no different than anybody else. And so when you look at it and you can finally adjust to that, and it took me a long time to do it because I was expecting Superman stuff in that office, right? And then I realized this is just like my sales job. It's no different. This is an occupation. Like, technically, nobody's really happy to be here. I mean, yeah, it's a cool job, but so is, probably playing in the NBA.
Right.
I bet if you ask somebody like Shaquille O'Neal, he would tell you, I mean, it was my job. It wasn't fun to play 82 games a year, and I got sick and my kids got sick, or so on and so forth. And I had to miss this funeral or that birthday. And so I think that that's the biggest step, is to just look back at it and go, well, yeah, it's kind of like any other job. And so, yeah, it took me several years to probably come to that. But, when you talk about the onboarding process, again, like, yeah, did I have some kind of crappy managers at times? Yeah, but so does everyone, right? Like, not everyone likes their boss. I mean, entire comedic routines are made up about this, right? So, like, not everyone's going to like their boss, and not everyone's going to have a good fit with their boss. and you might not like that person and so on. But for me, what I did was I just found a colleague, and I said, "Hey, I don't know what the heck I'm doing here. Like, I'm confused because our boss is bad." And he was like, "I know, he sucks. So here, I'll teach you how to do everything," and that was it. And so I think the advice would be that, if you have a boss who stinks, well, deal with it and try to respond accordingly, I guess.
Right. Right. And I think I've heard you say in another venue that not only is it, it's like any other occupation, but in another venue, I think you said it's like any other bureaucracy, right? I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know how
definitely.
big CIA is, but it's big.
Yep.
And that means it has its own bureaucratic hurdles, hoops to jump through, uh, infrastructure, all these different things as well. And I think that's another thing that certainly I do, but I imagine other people forget as well, is there's all the bureaucratic layers there, just like anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have a lot of red tape. And especially when you really do break down the brass tacks and you consider our ultimate boss is the president of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
That's who's in charge. That's who has the executive orders for 1, 2, 3, 3, 3. Like, that's who runs the show. And so when you think about that, you're like, yeah, of course, there's going to be a lot of people looking into what I'm doing. Yeah, there's going to be a
Right.
lot of emails that have to go back and forth. But then you also think, geez, at the end of the day, what I'm doing kind of really is life and death.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, if this person that's trading these secrets to me gets caught, they will die.
Right.
And so you have to always keep that into consideration as well. And so, while I guess conversely, like I said, it's just like any other job and it's just like any other profession. And, it's all the same as office space. Um, you do always have to keep that in the back of your mind and know, like, okay, while it is like every other job, and this reminds me of my sales job, and I don't like my boss, at the end of the day, what I'm doing, if I F this up, this guy gets killed.
Hmm.
So you really have to always be reticent of that and mindful of that. And that, I guess, would kind of make it unlike most other jobs, but same as military, same
Yeah.
as if you're a Navy SEAL, hey, if I don't go through this door correctly, me or my teammates might get killed, something like that.
Right.
So, but at the end of the day, I know enough Navy SEALs who will say the same to you, like, "Oh, this job's so boring," or like, "Oh, I hate this job," and you're like, "What? You parachute for a living, and
Right.
you're
You get to
you're
be,
also
yeah, tip
yeah,
of the
like
spear. Yeah.
how are you not what? Oh my gosh!" So yeah, I guess we're all just spoiled is the long way to put it.
Well, and some of that might be human nature, right? Once something becomes routine, meaning you do the job day in and day out, not necessarily that it's boring on the face of it, but
Right.
the routineness of it perhaps adds a layer of boringness. But
Yeah, it just becomes normal. That's
yeah,
what it
yeah,
is. I mean, anybody, again, you could look at a Lance Armstrong or a Shaquille O'Neal or anybody and go, "Oh my God, like, what was it like to play, 18 years for the Lakers and in the NBA?" I mean, it was my job,
right.
or like a famous actor. Like, I don't know,
Yes,
it's kind of tiresome. I didn't really like Hollywood. And you're like, but you're Brad Pitt, but it's like, yeah, but I'm in my 50th movie, like,
right.
I've done this so many times that it's rapid road at this point.
Right.
So yeah, definitely.
Now you mentioned, and I was going to say, like, several glimpses in your book do make it seem like you could swap, you know, Dunder Mifflin on The Office for CIA. On the other hand, you're talking about you get to Afghanistan living in a shipping container with rats and whatever. I mean, that's extreme sacrifices that you and I'm sure others make, you know, with very little recognition, unlike the military, as we were talking about offline, for our country. And that's such a juxtaposition. So it just makes me wonder more broadly, what do people get wrong about CIA?
Oh, geez. Well, I think the number one thing is to refer to us as agents. That's always something I'm quick to point out. No, it's CIA officer,
Mm-hmm.
FBI agent. We are not agents. Um, but here's the reality. Um, it's been glamorized.
Mm,
Okay. Hollywood has made it a big deal. And, when I was living in Washington, D.C. For, better part of a decade while I was working there, I used to say to the person I was dating, look, let's walk past the movie theater. Let's see how many of the posters on that wall have to deal with the CIA.
right.
Like, have to do, like, there's some sort of CIA connect, like there's some sort of something. And almost invariably, half the time, half the posters would have some sort of connection if they weren't outright Mission Impossible or
Mm,
outright James Bond or so on. And so, um, it's kind of this glamorized position where an occupation where people can't, they can't wrap their mind around the idea of a guy like me going, no, it was a lot like Dunder Mifflin. You know what I mean?
right.
Because you go, no, I just watched The Gray Man yesterday. And Ryan Gosling was a badass.
Right.
And he was so cool and he was so tough and he shoots these guns so well. And I'm going, yeah, 99% of the time, I'm writing reports,
Hmm.
sitting in an office like Jim, right? From The
Making a
Office.
PowerPoint. Yeah.
Yeah, wondering what Pam's doing, like,
Right.
so you just go, that can't be true. And honestly, I find that when I do say that, and I hope your listeners haven't shut this off at this point, but I find that uh, people don't like to hear that. They
Right.
don't. They don't like to hear that it's not superficial, that it's not glorious, and that it's not the most extreme 99 wall to wall, all day,
Mhm.
every day. And so when you kind of reveal that and go, no, like I had to take the metro and, like I was sweating through my suit and no, it wasn't fun and, so on and so forth. And yeah, of course, I guess in a way, I wouldn't say I'm to blame, but I certainly contributed to it. I mean, through writing my book, one of the big things I tried doing was, yeah, talking about the cool stuff and the high speed stuff and the action stuff and all of that, but also bringing you in to the mundane,
Right.
and to the relationships, and to remind you, hey, I'm still a human. So even though I was doing those cool things or those dangerous things, at the end of the day, I'm just like you.
Right. Right. And I certainly got that. And I think that was one of the more fascinating elements. And I don't say any of this stuff about the bureaucracy of your role, for anybody that might listen that would still be affiliated, that to downplay it, because I think that hopefully most of those jobs are necessary jobs to support the people who are out in the field, who are doing the work that you're
Certainly.
doing. It's
Yep.
the 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 modern bureaucracy often is largely necessary, with regulation, with oversight, with the finances of a business or of an organization. I mean, not always, not all roles perhaps are justified, but I think most are. It's just got to wade through it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And an analogy that I like to use, and certainly relevant now, think of Top Gun, right?
Hmm.
So those planes are being launched off of that carrier. Well, how many people did it take to build that carrier ship?
Right.
How many people did it take to build that plane? Subsequently, how many people staff that carrier when it's at sea?
Right.
How many people help you to land it? How many people help you as the pilot to navigate? Right. And so you think about that and you go, I couldn't do this job by myself. I
Right.
can't drive the boat and fly the plane, and like
Right.
do everything. You do need a lot of help. And so if there's maybe 12 planes on that carrier ship, how many people are staffing it? 1,500, people are on that boat to make
Right.
it work for you 20 people to take off. So without them, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. And I've always been very thankful and very grateful and supportive of everyone who supported me, because I definitely could not have done my job without the help of a lot of other people, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. That said, it was not all folks always supporting where you wanted to go with your career. And you tell some stories about having to self-advocate. And that's another thing that folks see out there. I see all the time on the social medias, is advocating for yourself in your career. So what advice do you have for people doing so? You were pretty gung-ho in a couple examples. Again, people need to read the book if they want to see the full stories, but really, I'll say assertive in saying where you want to go, why you want to go there, and working hard to make it happen. Do you have advice for people when it comes to self-advocacy in your career?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Um, I guess the asterisk I would put on that for myself is I didn't get that way until I already had the Willy Wonka golden ticket. Okay.
Mm.
So, like, after graduating the farm, which is our training school,
Mm-hmm.
eh, the world's kind of your oyster. It's the equivalent of like graduating buds if you're a Navy SEAL, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, um, it gave me this one up. So for like the first couple of years I was in the CIA, no, I didn't advocate. No, I didn't like enjoy my environment. And I think that comes across in the book, like I
Right.
was pretty upset to be doing office work because I didn't want to do office work.
Right.
But once I had graduated the farm, that's when you start to see this shift, especially in the book, of me going, no, actually, here's how it's going to go. And this is what I want to do. And, a lot of people said I was a brat. A lot of people said I was a cowboy. A lot of people said a lot of things, but I did get what I wanted. But I would say that before you can do that, and this kind of stinks to admit, you do have to have some sort of golden ticket in your
Mm-hmm.
pocket. You have to know that either you're irreplaceable or it's going to really not benefit management to kind of do what you're asking for.
Right.
And you also, I guess, in a way, have to know what your left and right, what your buoys are. And so for me, the reason why I went so hard in the paint was I knew that I was asking for something that no one else wanted. And so
Mm.
maybe that's a thing too. If you're going to advocate, maybe ask for the most difficult job. Maybe ask for something nobody else does want and say, hey, I'm going to try this for a year to get the experience. I don't know, but maybe don't think that you're entitled to the vice presidentship, of a company just because it's your third day at work. And
Really?
so
Oh,
it
that's two
sucks.
disappointments in one
Oh,
podcast, Doug. Come
shucks.
on now.
Shucks. Shucks. Sorry, David. But reality is this. Um, I knew that not only did I have the golden ticket, meaning I had graduated the farm, so they didn't want to lose me, but two, I was asking to go to somewhere that most people did not want to go to.
Which
And
at the time was
so,
Afghanistan, right?
yep,
Yeah.
absolutely, 2010. And so I had those two things in my favor. So I guess if you're gonna self-advocate and you want to lean in and you want to advance and you want to get to the top, you got to have something that the others don't. And I had the farm, which was hard as hell, and I graduated. Most don't. And I was willing to go somewhere no one else was willing to go to. So when you have a couple tickets like that in your back pocket, it makes it hard to say no to you.
That makes sense. So in the civilian world, who knows? That might be certain certifications. That might be years of specialized experience. It could be knowledge of certain company workings. We won't call them skeletons in the closet, but perhaps just how the sausage is made, type of deal. But you got to have something.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've said this. I give advice to some of my cousins sometimes, and one of the pieces of advice I give is this: hey, how many languages do you speak? How many? Okay, you speak one. Well, do you think it would benefit you if you learned Spanish?
Right.
Could that help you in your career? I mean, you're going to have to do it on your own. So maybe instead of watching Netflix for 4 hours a night, maybe spend an hour on Duolingo.
Right.
Like
It's free.
maybe, yeah, like maybe learn a little bit of Spanish. And the very fact that you have that gives you that extra advantage. Now imagine if you take that to the next level and you're fluent in Spanish, or not only Spanish, but you can speak Portuguese as well.
Mhm.
Guess what? All of South America is going to be interested in you.
Right.
Like you just really took a leg up at that point. And so it's things you can do on your own time to improve yourself. It doesn't necessarily have to come as an accreditation from the company that you work for. It can be something that you did on your own, and I think that that's oftentimes something that we neglect and kind of let go by the wayside. Whereas, fortunately for me in my old profession, it was something that was mandated.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. For me, I chose to blend the uselessness of Netflix with the usefulness of Duolingo, and opted to try and learn Irish during the pandemic. So,
Oh, nice.
that's really paying dividends.
Great.
All right. So we're talking about advocating for yourself, but I want to kind of in your career, but I want to kind of back up then. And you mentioned, having some sort of golden ticket way to advocate for yourself, something valuable you're bringing to the table. But I want to back up then and talk about, you're a Midwest native, and you noted that a lot of folks at CIA are Mormon. And so I was just curious, like, do you think there's something in your background that leaned you towards success in the agency?
Yeah, I do. Let me address what you said at the top, though. When I say that a lot of people in the agency were Mormon, that's just a simple matter of fact. And some of my best friends are Mormons to this day. Okay. So, but you might ask, well, why would that be? And the simple answer is because to get into the CIA, and I don't know how the heck I managed all those years without making mistakes, because certainly I'm not flawless, but you can't have broken the law.
Right.
You can't have done drugs or alcohol. Well, I mean, you can drink, but you can't have a DUI or anything like that. Well,
right.
Mormons don't do drugs or alcohol.
Right.
Like that's part of their religion. And so when it comes to you submitting your resume and me submitting my resume, if I happen to have a little bit of a flaw on there, I got a misdemeanor for this or misdemeanor for that, and you don't, then you're definitely going to get the job, because that's how they determine your viability and your trustworthiness. If this person's broken the law quite a few times, maybe we shouldn't be hiring them, which is a curious case. And this would be the segue into your second question. You're then going to ask these people to break the law. So these very innocent people that you've asked to break the law, aren't familiar with breaking the law.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why my background, I think, really resonated. And I don't know if they just took a chance on me or they just had a spelling error or how I got through the door. but the reality is this: unlike the vast majority of my contemporaries, and I've said this many times, and I know it upsets a lot of, people in the agency, you can't be squeaky clean and understand what it's like or relate. And this goes all the way back to your top question, like being relatable,
Mm-hmm.
understanding someone's baseline, being able to connect with them. It's the same as any relationship you developed with any other human being. I came from poverty, and 9 out of 10 of the people that I'm talking to are poor.
Right.
And so I know what they want. I know they want money, but I also know how to respect them, and I know how to communicate with them effectively, because I am you. You are me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I even said at one point in my book, or in an interview or something, I said, I'm looking at some of these guys in Afghanistan going, oh, this is Uncle Paul, like this is Uncle Joe, this is Uncle, going, yeah, like I can one-to-one see you, and I understand why you're saying the things that you're saying. But quite frankly, if you went to a really elite high school and then went to Yale and then got a master's at Harvard, it's sorry, shocking news here. It's going to be a little bit harder for you to relate to somebody in a third world country. It is, because you've never seen it before and you don't know what it's like for somebody who's hungry all day. And you got to take that into consideration too. Like hungry all day. That's a big thing, like starving all day.
Yeah.
Just trying to get a couple dollars scrapped together to get some food. That's a big deal. And, that's kind of how I grew up. And not me personally, but like everyone, my high school was in the second poorest county in Indiana. So you look at that and go, well, Indiana is like the fourth poorest state in the union. So when you do the mathematics on that, you go, okay, yeah, like you kind of get it a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was thankful for that because, and I know I made a joke about it, but I was confused when I first started because like my initiating class, everyone had these top tier degrees from these top tier universities and went to these really good high schools. And I was like, wait, your parents paid for you to go to high school? And they're like, yeah, like $35,000 a year. I'm like, wait, for high school? Like
wow.
you paid for a high school? Like mine was free. I went to the county school, like, because it was the only one in the county.
In the whole county.
Yeah, like there was no option for me to go to a private school. And so, yeah, I was definitely a fish out of water. But I think also, that's what, you could say it was a stone in my shoe. But it is what propelled me to be as good as you, to be as smart as you, and to compete.
Right.
Because I was like, man, these cats, geez, like they're really bright. Like what the heck? Like they're talking about listening to Chopin at night, and I'm going, what's Chopin? And they're going, Mozart. Is that a vodka? Like, what is that? And so it definitely was an impetus to me wanting to try even harder, because I wanted to show them, I guess you could say, that, hey, I'm good enough to be here too.
So I hadn't thought about this in advance, but you just mentioned about seeing, we'll say, your relatives in some of the folks that you were interacting with. But some of the folks you're interacting with are dangerous people, right? Enemies of the United States.
And I certainly didn't mean that.
No, and what I mean is, or where I'm headed is, was there ever a moment where you started to get what's it called, like a Stockholm syndrome type of scenario going on, where you're relating more to the folks on the ground, your assets, than to back home? Or was that never a problem because you always had the Twin Towers in your mind? Because I know that was
Yeah,
a big
no, my
motivator to join up.
no,
What was that
my
like?
my loyalty never wavered. That's a fact. Never,
Yeah.
never, not 1 second. And look, some of the things you have to do, and this is uncomfortable to say, and people don't like hearing it out loud. Guess what? Espionage is a nasty business.
Mm-hmm.
It's really nasty and oftentimes very violent. People
Mm,
die.
right.
Okay. So you kind of are trading in people's lives in a way. All right. And not just in a way, but definitively
Yeah.
in a
Fact.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Matter of factly, you're trading in people's lives. And so it's a dangerous business and you got to take it extremely seriously. But um, no, I always had in my mind this person that I'm talking to. And again, I know you read my book, so you understand. I talk about one of my premier assets. I was saying, me and this guy could have rode out, in DC. We could have
Right.
been buddies, like this guy was a very strikingly good looking dude
Mm-hmm.
and he would have done well, like he's a cool dude. I would have
Mm-hmm.
liked to have gotten drinks with him and had a good time. But at the end of the day, um, I work for the United States government, and I never forgot that.
Yeah.
And you sitting across from me are an asset, okay? And I'm the hammer, and I am a tool of the United States government. And my job is to collect your information. And I never, ever forgot that, ever. And some people might hear that and also be confused by what I mean by that and say, yeah, you were a tool, you were used, blah, blah, blah. No, trust me. I always knew what I was doing, and I was always doing it because what I was collecting was important.
Right.
And the majority of what I was collecting was to take IEDs off the battlefield. So, quite honestly, I didn't give an F what your opinion was back in Maryland, right?
Right.
Like, there are 18-year-olds out here getting their legs blown off.
Right.
And I'm going to do everything I can, right or wrong, to make sure that that doesn't happen. So if you're asking me like Stockholm syndrome, nah, because I always just thought about the kids who either didn't make it home or went home amputated or what have you. Nah, that way superseded. And, I never questioned it, not once.
And I appreciate you feeling that. I know that, we'd kind of prepped a little bit and that wasn't on the list. It just kind of came to me. And maybe I'm thinking here, maybe that's even from Hollywood too, right? Because so often the villains and the heroes and the people in between switch loyalties and all this stuff. So no, that absolutely makes sense. And about keeping the perspective and, not necessarily being worried about what folks, you know, thousands of miles away are feeling about some of the stuff you're choosing to do or needing to do in the moment to help accomplish the mission. And
Well, I mean, David, I think, you brought it up at the top with even films like Gray Man. You
mhm,
have, shoot, I forget the actor's name, but uh, not the protagonist, but the antagonist, the bad guy in the film, is playing like a former CIA agent, and
right,
he's bent on revenge. And
right,
while I haven't seen the film, so I don't want to poo-poo on it, um, that's a narrative, and
right,
that's one that people believe, and they think there really are these rogue agents out there, and this, fourth column, and like, oh, like, yeah, the CIA really actually has this entire other wing that does these nasty things. And it's like, nah, because it would have been me.
right,
I would have been the person handed that order. No, it would have been me. and I was never handed an order like that. And so I'm telling you, you're wrong.
Yeah.
And it's hard for people to digest that and go, yeah. And I mean, still to this day, my mom doesn't like to use the word CIA. Like, she
Mm-hmm.
doesn't like to say it out loud. She knows I work there, but she'll be like, your place that you used to, the thing you used to do, when you were in that place and you were fighting those people. And I'm like, wait, you mean CIA and Afghanistan? Like, don't want to hear it, like, kind of just uncomfortable, right?
Right.
So yeah, you experience that a lot. And I think another question you asked was, after getting out, just kind of how that experience was and
Mm-hmm.
just adapting. um yeah, that was the biggest thing of telling somebody. I can't tell you how many people who have asked me what I used to do for a living. Maybe I'm at a restaurant or I'm at a party or a bar or what have you. And I go, oh, I was actually in the CIA. Okay, good line, dude. Like, nice pickup line. No, I mean, for real. And sadly enough, if I'm actually communicating with the person because they're, a friend of a friend or something, I'll be like, I hate to do this, but you can Google my name and you can see that I really was there.
Right.
And then, and then it's always the kick in the pants of them going, this was you? Not you. I can't imagine you having done something like that. Impossible. You? Yeah, I know how to cook as well. Thanks.
I I I can't even imagine. I think I was talking with another guest about this. There's a movie in the 90s with John Cusack where he just tells everybody he's a hitman. He's at his 10-year
Point blank.
yeah, he's at his 10-year high school reunion and just
Mhm.
tells, oh, I'm a hitman. And they're like,
Yep.
oh, okay.
Yeah, no, you nailed it. Because I I think as often as maybe last week, I was talking with a couple of friends of mine and somebody overheard someone refer to my past occupation.
Mhm.
And they were like, oh, so you're some like secret agent man? And I was like, no, I was a case officer. And then the question would be, what's that?
What's that?
A field operative. What's that? I was a spy. Oh, so you think you're James Bond? No, I don't think. I'm telling you, that's what I
Right.
legitimately used to do for a living. Oh,
Right.
yeah, right. Okay. I mean, what do you want me to say? But I think it's just become such a trope that's something, uh, True Lies, for example, with Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm
Yeah.
sure you saw that,
Yep.
where the guy is trying to pick up his wife, pretending to be this secret agent man.
Yep.
And Arnold Schwarzenegger is sitting there the whole time going, but I am. but that is me. Like, this guy, so it kind of makes me laugh.
I love that movie, by the way.
Oh, it's great.
True Lies. Bill, particularly when they take Bill Paxton up on top of the reservoir or whatever and threaten to throw him off.
And he wets himself.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. It's a great movie.
Would a spy do this?
I'm not a spy, man. It's great.
Yeah.
All right. Let me come back to life after the CIA in just a minute. I had one more question I really want to cover about life in.
Okay.
That also shocked me, which was the level of autonomy. And not just in your book. I've heard this. I heard it. I think one of Jocko Willink's podcasts, he was talking with somebody out of SOG in Vietnam and interacting with case officers there who were running, assets on the ground, just basically totally by themselves. And the amount of autonomy as a case officer that you had, particularly, I mean, again, you're in your 20s, right? Like, what, I know you went through rigorous training, but what the heck is that like? What's your mindset? You're on the ground. It's just like, go do your job. What is going through your head?
Well, let me try to put it into an analogy for you. I just saw a popular show that's on, I think, Apple or something right now, about Derek Jeter.
Mm.
And he's talking about being 17 and 18, and he's about to enter the major leagues.
Mm-hmm.
And his first year, like, he does terrible, and like he's in
Mm.
double A and then triple A, and he's just doing really bad. And then suddenly he's wearing a Yankees uniform and he's 23.
Right.
And he was like, I mean, his words, I didn't think about my age. He's 23, he's 24, but like we mentioned at the top, it just becomes normal, And so Derek Jeter isn't going, wow, I'm the starting shortstop for the Yankees at 24 years old. He's just going, I mean, this is my profession. This is what I do for a living. And I just so happen to be a shortstop for the New York Yankees. And so, I mean, my age never really came into a factor. I mean, you are so highly trained
Mm-hmm.
that when the rubber meets the road, you know what to do. You
Yeah.
played that game before. And so it just all comes second nature to you. And so, yeah, I mean, gosh dang, how old was I when I was working on Syria? I think I was 29,
Wow.
and I was the point man for that. And I look back and I'm going, okay, that was 10 years ago. But I look back on it and go, yeah, but I was ready then. And if anything, by this point, 10 years later, I've lost a step.
Mm.
I wasn't as good as
Right.
I would have been at 29. And I'm sure Derek Jeter would say the same. At 39, he wasn't as good as he was at 29.
Right.
Like he didn't have the arm. And so, with experience, of course, you can become better too. But I think just like my willingness to put up with a lot of the stuff that I put up with and be able to deal with a lot of the stuff that I dealt with, I wouldn't at 39.
Mm.
Looking back 10 years, I would have
Yeah.
said, this is bullshit. I quit.
Right.
Like I'm not, nah, this isn't for me. Whereas that amount of stuff you have to put up with when you're in the middle of a civil war, it's a lot. And so I think my youth actually helped me at the time, but I don't think I ever like considered it in a way of, wow, I can't believe I'm only this age and I'm doing this thing.
Yeah.
It was, well, yeah, because I am this age, I am doing this thing. And then also one thing to tack onto that, consider it's still a federal organization. So it's like the military. You only got to do 20 years and you can officially retire.
Mm.
So if you started at 22, you can be out the door at 42, just like the
Right.
military. Start at 18, you're out at 38. You got a pension, things are nice. So, that goes with all federal agencies as
Yeah.
well. So with the CIA, you're looking at it going, the people who are 39 are in upper tier management here,
Hmm.
right? And
I
you
never
go,
thought about it
whoa,
like that.
yeah, but you go, whoa, 39, still so young, no way. Yeah, they're cheats at that point, and the same way that if you're 39 in the military and you started at 18, you might be a colonel, it comes with time and grade. And so, yeah, I look at how I was at 29 and how I would have viewed a 39-year-old me. I would have been like, he's an old timer.
Hmm.
Like that guy's an old hand. Like he can't do the shit I'm doing.
Right.
Like he's not high speed anymore. He's slow, you
Right.
know. But so yeah, if that answers your question in a long about way.
No, it does. And it's really fascinating. And I've honestly never thought of it that way. And yet again, I feel misled by Hollywood because they hire management actors to portray management or leaders in FBI, CIA who are 55 or 60. But
Sure.
interestingly, I think you segued us nicely to one of my last questions, which is, you know, in Hollywood, in Jason Bourne and No Time to Die and I don't know, whatever, Mission Impossible, these guys either do it until they're 60 and they're still somehow, you know, kicking ass and taking names at that age, or they die in the job. So what has been the last few years for you? I mean, you've started a foundation. I think I heard at one point you were working on a second book. You've done some work in Hollywood. What is life after the CIA like?
Well, I imagine most people's life after the CIA probably doesn't take the path I took.
Fair enough.
Because very few people who leave the CIA write a book and go through that whole process and then go into Hollywood. Some do, certainly. But like I was saying, I think and again, people be like, okay, that's like stubbing your toe and complaining about it. Whereas you. But one of the most frustrating things, really, it truly is when I'm just trying to tell somebody like, oh no, that's why I speak Pashto. And they'll say, you don't speak Pashto. And then I can speak to you in fluent Pashto and go, Tsingiye Jordi Pachere Kornai Shadi. And they go, yeah, but that's not real. And there's just been this, like, I don't know, when you say something to people that is kind of surreal to them, they discount it. And that's been a real experience of mine for, well, shoot, when did I leave? 2013. So almost 10 years now. You know, when either I tell somebody, hey, I was in the CIA, this is what I used to do, these are the places I went to. Nah, but you didn't. And then I might show you photos and go, no, this is me right here, dressed like the Taliban. And they go, yeah, but is it really? Or, you know, like I said, I can speak to you in fluent Pashto. And funny story, I even met a nice person in Los Angeles who was a Pashtun woman. And she was talking with me, and I said, yeah, I speak Pashto. And I started speaking Pashto with her. And she was even like, how? This is scaring me. Like, like, what do you do? Like, wait, there's no way you know this language. I'm like, why is it, you know, so again, like, what becomes normalcy for you? Like we said, everything just kind of becomes the office after a while.
Right.
Being a spy or speaking this obscure language is just normal to me. Like, that's my experience. And that's just a language I happen to know. And it's a job I happen to have. And so, you know, when somebody tells me they're working in sales for FedEx, I go, cool. You know, and if they say, and I speak German, cool. You know, like, I don't question you. But when you go, yeah, I used to be a spy for the CIA and I'm fluent in Pashto, and, you know, I used to live with the Taliban, they're like, get out of here. You know, like, you're a liar. And it's like, actually, I'm not. Kind of just sharing my experience with you. But
does that hurt? Like, when people discount your experience, does that, I mean, I know it's kind of a personal question, but I mean, the name of the podcast is No Bad Questions here. So what, does that hurt?
Does it hurt? No. I think that, again, and I'm not trying to put a black eye on Hollywood. Obviously,
Sure.
I work here now. It's my profession. So obviously I don't want to do that and muddy the water. But I think that we've just gotten so used to it over the years. I mean, shoot, how many 007 films have there been? 30 at this point. You know, how many Mission Impossible films can we do? You know, 10, 15. And so I get it. And quite frankly, if I hadn't had the job that I had, I'd probably be the same guy, you know, going, no, boss, like, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. oh, come on, dude, nice line, you
Right.
know, and not believe them either. And so I don't like, I would say, you asked me, does it hurt? Yeah, it does personally, like on a very personal level, you know, in like my inner core. Yeah, it kind of does stink because we don't get to wear a uniform. You
Hmm.
know, that's what the whole part of the job. We don't get to sit on a car in a parade. You
Right.
know, we don't, you know, have people thanking us for our service in an airport. You know, that's the whole point of being incognito. You know, that's it. And you're clandestine. And so you're covert. You keep it to yourself. But in keeping it to yourself and not being able to share it with your loved ones or anything like that, it definitely takes a toll on you. And
Yeah.
I know you read my book, so you know it took a serious toll on me at one point, called my downward spiral. And so yeah, it eat at you. And any spy worth his salt will tell you it eats at you. It
Yeah.
definitely does. It's not easy. I mean, living a lie, and imagine being in love with someone and lying to their face every day about what you
Right.
do for a living, or lying to your folks, you know, or lying to your brother or your grandmother, even, right?
Yeah.
Like just outwardly, outright lying. It eventually it catch up to you, you know, and I think that's why my shelf life was as um, short as it was, because it caught up with me pretty quick. And I know I burned the candle at both ends, but I guess they would say it gave off a more beautiful glow. So,
Well, Doug, I really appreciate you being here and talking with me. And if you know, if you don't get it at the airport because you're not wearing a uniform, you don't get the parade. I'll just say it here publicly for all of my dozens and dozens of viewers. um, Thank you for your service and for your sacrifice to help protect soldiers, to help forward the mission in Afghanistan, regardless of how that came out. I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to,
yep,
you know, just express the gratitude for you. And I hope that people will choose to go pick up your book, read about it. It's really just so insightful. Is there a place that people can come, you know, support your foundation? Where can they find the book? Where can they find you on all the socials?
well, I am on LinkedIn and I'm on Instagram, which is something very novel for me. I never obviously had any of that until about 6 months ago. But usually my handle is just my first and last name, Doug Laux, CIA. So you can find me on Instagram or LinkedIn or any of those. Um, but otherwise, no, you're right. I am working on the foundation and we're doing a lot of good, but that's kind of something I do privately and, you know, something I'm very passionate about, but that keeps up a lot of my time. And, but I can always make time for somebody who makes a request like you did. And it was clear that you had read my book. And I really appreciate the fact that you did do the research and, you know, you understand what I'm talking about. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. I appreciate your time today. I hope people get some insight out of it because I know we tried to give some crossover nuggets from your career path to other careers and relationships. But um, Doug Laux, Left of Boom, thank you very much for being here on No Bad Questions.
All the best.